Joining us now, scholar in residence at the Center for Israel Studies at the American University, Dan Arbell. Dan was the deputy chief of mission at the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much for joining us. This sort of violence, this sort of clash in the West Bank is exactly what everybody has been worried about, not just what's happening in the north with Hezbollah or anything that might happen in Gaza, but that the West Bank would light up as well.
I see the reports that I see that it's happening in Gaza and not the West Bank, and that we're talking about hundreds of people injured or killed in a Gaza hospital, if I'm not mistaken. And as a result of the health ministry in Gaza is the Hamas health ministry, and they're reporting that an Israeli missile hit that hospital, while Israel is looking into it as saying it may have been a Hamas missile that hit that hospital. So it's the situation is we're not exactly sure, who's responsible for it. But in any case, it's a tragic event with hundreds of people, hundreds of casualties, and this is just part of the horrors of war and what all sides are facing. And again, the specific issue in the hospital needs to be examined closely. But this is, again, part of an ongoing war. And unfortunately, civilians, innocent civilians are being placed in harm's way or end up being hurt, and that's really awful.
Everything is so hot right now. The grief and the anger, again, white hot. There are the terrible images we're seeing out of Gaza. There's still the hostages. There's a hostage video. It is all so bad over there right now. The president of the United States is headed to Israel tonight, and he's supposed to meet with Abbas, although Abbas apparently is going back to the West Bank. Egypt is saying it's very upset about this hospital bombing. It's not clear that he's going to be able to meet with either of those players any longer. If you were advising President Biden right now, what would you be telling him?
Well, it's important that Biden is coming and showing support, solidarity with Israel, and at the same time coming to discuss the situation with Arab leaders and showing that the U.S. cares, is involved, and is trying to work out a resolution of this conflict. Part of his original aim was to try and find ways of dealing with the piling up of terrible humanitarian circumstances in the Gaza Strip. So it's still very important that he does come and he does address the Israeli people, the Palestinian people, and meet with Arab leaders. But again, we're just in the beginning of this, and we're in for a long haul, and this may take weeks, if not more than that. And in the meantime, civilians are getting hurt. Biden's trip, however, is historic and very, very important, and just shows how much the U.S. cares, is involved, is trying to work to resolve the conflict.
Ambassador, what we're showing right now are the earlier images of victims being taken to another hospital from, we believe, the hospital bombing elsewhere. We're also toggling between this and live images out of Ramallah, the West Bank, where we're seeing clashes. We'll go back to those in a second. Right now in the country, though, there is also a lot of anger, not just toward Hamas for what happened, but to Benjamin Netanyahu for allowing this to happen, and the divisions that were already there before any of this happened, before October 7th. Can Benjamin Netanyahu continue to lead? Is he the best decision maker right now for Israel, given that his political life is also on the line? Can he make the best decisions for that country?
I'm one of those who believes that he is not. That's my personal opinion, but he is the elected prime minister of Israel, and he is leading the cabinet at this moment. And while there is fighting, I don't see anything changing that. But I do believe that once the dust settles and once this is over, he will have to face the Israeli public and, first of all, take responsibility, something that he's not done so far, and at the same time look inward and he may reach the end of the road for him politically. Certainly, the leadership has, this was a systematic failure on the leadership level, the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces level, the intelligence community, but the government has a lot of responsibility here, and certainly Mr. Netanyahu, as heading the government, has many questions to answer as to how this has happened and how he's handling the situation.
Let me ask you about what they do next and what sort of prudence they should be, the Israelis should be exercising. Again, given how hot everything is and how it feels like the whole region is a tinderbox, is there a way for Israel to maintain the international support that it currently has, given all that we saw on October 6th, the horrible images? Is there something that they can do to maintain that without inflaming international concerns for Gaza, and the humanitarian crisis that strip is currently facing?
You're absolutely. It's very difficult. Israel has a tough balancing act to take and to make, because international pressure is building. As long as the U.S. gives Israel the green light or is not tying Israel's hands, Israel will continue with the operation. But at a certain point, if situations like we're seeing now in Gaza with this hospital and this tragic death of hundreds of people continues, then it will be very hard for the U.S. to continue to back Israel in such a way, and may impact Israel's maneuvering and ability to kind of continue in the same way. But Israel didn't even begin its ground operation, and is probably waiting till Biden is out of the region before it goes back to that idea. And again, the Israeli leaders are saying for the entire time that this is just the beginning. So we're in for a long haul, but at a certain point, international pressure may lead or create a situation for Israel that it will be impossible to continue in this direction.
Ambassador Dan Arbell, thank you very much for